As we continue this series that we're doing on food preservation without refrigeration, we're going to talk about what do you do if the power goes out, you lose the grid, something happens, and you're going to lose all the meat in your freezer and you need to do something drastic to save it very quickly in bulk. Is there anything that can be done? Yes, and it's very, very easy. I'm going to show you how to do it. You can save all of the meat in your freezer very, very quickly. You don't have to let it go to waste. Now, in order to talk about this properly, I'm going to have to give you a disclaimer. This is not an FDA-approved method, but this is a time-tested method that has been used for generations, is still used to this day in other countries, and is still used to this day by the Amish. Now, we all know that the FDA-approved method of preserving meat is to pressure can it. The problem with that in an emergency situation is if the grid goes down, let's say you have an electric stove, you can't use your canner, or let's say it's just not fast enough because you can only fit at the most 7-quart jars in your canner at one time, and it takes practically all day to do it. So you're going to lose your meat because you're not doing it very quickly, and you have to sit there and babysit the canner. Even if you have a gas stove or you're doing it on a propane burner, it's going to be very difficult to stabilize a pressure canner in those situations. So how do other cultures do this, and how have they done it for generations? How did the Amish still do it to this day? They do not use pressure canners. They never have. Canning has been around for way longer than modern pressure canners have, and they have very safely and effectively been canning meat. And you can do this very easily and in bulk. And I'm going to show you the equipment that you need. And it's very inexpensive, probably things you already have, especially if you live in the country and do any kind of outdoor cooking to begin with. And these are things that you can have on store in case of an emergency to be able to save your meat out of the freezer very easily. Now, you absolutely can do this on an open wood flame, but it's going to be easier with propane. In Louisiana, just about everybody has one of these. This is what we use to boil crawfish in every crawfish season, and we use it for other things as well. You can buy it as a whole kit pretty inexpensively. My voice is echoing in the pot, so the sound might be a little strange, but you're going to be able to put a lot of jars in here. And what this comes down to is as simple as this. You can water bath your meat and it will preserve it. The chickens want to be in the video, excuse their noisiness. But this is the reality, is that for generations, this is how people have preserved their meat before refrigeration. You can use mason jars of any brand or variety. I typically use the quart jars, but you can even get the big half-gallon jars, and I'll show you those in a little bit. You can fit them in here. This pot's big enough to double stack. We're going to see how many we can get in there at one time. You may not realize how much meat you can actually pack into 1-quart mason jars. Whenever I pressure can, I put about 17 pounds of meat. Well, the meat cuts were 17 pounds. One of them was a brisket. I cut that big slab of fat off, so you lost some poundage in that. But regardless, I got 17 pounds of meat out of my freezer and stuffed into 7-quart jars. So you can fit a lot into a small space and preserve it where it will last on the shelf for decades, and you don't have to worry about losing it. And you can do it quick, you can do it in bulk, you can do it without babying it. You're literally going to put them in the jars, the meat, put it in the water, cover it with water, and boil it for 3 hours. Take it out, let it cool undisturbed. By the next day, it's going to be sealed, it's going to be safe, it's going to be good on the shelf. This is how it's been done for generations. That's how you save your meat that's in your freezer in a power down emergency situation. Now, these are quarts. These are half gallons. Kind of put it next to me for comparison. They're both very large and can hold a lot. And the thing with water bathing is that it doesn't matter the size of your jar, whether it's pints, quarts, whatever, you're going to still boil it for 3 hours. Now, we're talking about meat preservation right now, so I'm going to tell you that all meats are going to be 3 hours. All sizes are going to be 3 hours. I will put a list at the end of the different times for different things that you would need to water bath if you're going to preserve through water bath. Now, this is considered rebel canning. This is not FDA approved. Again, I know there's going to be a million comments saying that's not how you do it. I'm not talking about the official FDA approved way to do things. I'm talking about the heritage, traditional way things have been done for generations, and what you can do in an emergency situation so that you don't lose everything in your freezers all at one time. So let's see how many we can fit into here. All right, we fit the whole case. That's 12 quart jars into the pot. We can put our rack and stack a whole nother case. That's 24 quart jars that we can fit in this one pot at one time. That'll get the job done really, really quick. Again, remember, you would be surprised how much meat you can pack if you debone it into a quart jar. You can technically can the bone as well, but it's going to take up a lot of space. And it's not worth it. You better to cut the meat off, use it. If you want, boil the bones and save the broth from it, you can that as well and preserve it for later uses. Now, again, it's going to be 3 hours for all meats across the board. There are other times that are less for different things. Since this is about meat, I'm going to give you that. But at the end, I will give you a list, make it quick and easy. You can write it all down so that you know, because the reality is that you can water bath everything. Yes, it's going to take more time than pressure canning, but it's going to take less equipment, less effort, and less babying it. And you can do it on an open fire if you need to, or with a propane burner and a really big pot so you can get it done quickly. So I hope that helps you, but put that in your knowledge bank, have some equipment on hand. You never know. We lose power here quite a bit. I've mentioned it before. We're Louisiana. We have hurricanes. We have, generators and things to kind of preserve it, but you never know. If you have a situation that's more long-term, or even supply chain problems where you can't get the fuel that you need, whatever the situation, just be prepared, even if it's just with knowledge and knowing how to preserve your meat so you don't lose everything in your freezer. This is how they've done it. This is how they still do it overseas. This is how the Amish do it. It's safe. It's effective. I would do this in an emergency situation. All right, so now we have to bring up botulism. I'm not going to talk too much on this. I'll do a whole separate video on rebel canning, the science behind pressure canning and rebel canning, and all of those things. But the biggest threat in canning is going to be botulism, and that's what most people are afraid of, and that's why you pressure can and you don't water bath and all this. Okay, so here's the thing. First of all, botulism is found in the dirt, so you're going to be more likely to get it from root plants like potatoes and carrots, not very likely from meat, and we're talking about meat preservation today. But also what you're doing in the 3-hour water bath is the same thing you're doing in the 90-minute pressure canning. It's just taking twice as long to do it. But you're doing it with easier equipment and you're doing 4 times as much at the same time. So there's just that benefit to it, and you don't have to be so precise, which is hard to do if you're doing like, a wood fire or something like that. You can get water up to a boil easily on a wood fire. Not so easy to maintain exactly 10 pounds of pressure temperature wise in a pressure canner and all of that. That's why water bath is more practical for an emergency situation. Yes, it will take twice as long, but it will be just as effective. So botulism. Botulism is in actuality extremely rare in home canning. Most cases of botulism in America, which are very, very rare, very few, a lot of it is really found in infants from having things that they weren't supposed to have before their stomachs were prepared for it, like honey and things like that. And then a normal human adult, their stomach and immune system will handle botulism without any problem, and you'll never know you encountered it. Besides that, botulism is killed within 3 to 10 minutes of boiling temperatures. So you're going to be boiling for 3 hours. You're going to be good. You're going to be fine. And if you're just a little unsure, when you take your product out and go to use it, make sure when you cook it, you reheat it, you bring it up to a boil for a length of time before you serve it, and then you will not have to worry about botulism at all. Botulism it can be dangerous to a compromised immune system, but your chances of dying from food poisoning from store-bought food are far greater than your chances of dying from botulism from home canned food. In fact, you risk your life a lot more every time you leave your house, get on the road or do anything. You're probably more likely to be struck by lightning or even an asteroid than to die from botulism. So I just want to kind of bring you back into balance, because there's been a big scare to make you afraid of home canning and make you more dependent on buying what was canned in a processing plant. There are safety procedures you take to minimize the risk, of course, but botulism is not as dangerous as some would make you to believe that it is if you're healthy, you have a strong immune system, you have normal gut flora, and if you make sure that your food is heated the way it ought to be before you eat it.